Then let's begin with a word of prayer. Sometimes, Father, it's good that we should listen to you, and sometimes we just don't. Either way, you love us and care for us and look after us, for our eternal soul and sometimes even for our present life. For all these things, we're grateful, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, I know this looks strange because we're not going to read the first one. So let's go to Acts 22, 17 and following. And we'll divide that up.
22, 17.
Starting at 17. Okay, now, last time we got together, the Lord appeared to Paul. Yeah, what did happen? Let's see. Oh, yeah, and he warned him about protection and to, he'd look after him. Okay, let's see what happens this time. It's in the year 58. That's 28 years after Jesus. Okay? And we'll be in Jerusalem, and it'll be June 11th. I'm not going to read it because it's not necessary to do that. Paul was just completing his third missionary journey. Confusing looking, isn't it? But it basically starts here in Antioch, and he goes over to hometown Tarsus, all the way through the middle section, which he'd done in his first and second journey. And then he goes weaving all around here, and finally he comes back down to Tyre, Ptolemais, and Caesarea.
So this is the third trip, okay.
This is the end of his third journey.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to pick it up down here.
Okay.
How long that took?
Say again?
How long did that take?
Oh, there are years involved here. He left Caesarea and arrived in Jerusalem in 58 A.D. He shipped in from Tyre here, then came down to Ptolemais, down to Caesarea, and then you come up Antiochus, and then you come up to Jerusalem. And that's just walking. Yeah, no big deal.
He got his steps in.
Oh, yeah, he got his steps in. Paul proceeded to go to the temple for the Sunday festival of Passover. Pentecost. Okay? This is the temple here. This is the temple complex. This is the platform that was built. This is the store, which is where all the marketing was done. And this here is the fortress of Antonia on the north side. I just want you to get a sense of it, okay? The pools on that side are here. That's it. This is the new city up here, and this is Jerusalem.
And the scale of this, that temple is what, quarter-mile wide probably?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, overall. Not all that big. I mean, the fortress is bigger.
Yeah, but for its day, it was huge.
Oh yeah, for the area.
Yeah.
But compared to others, it wasn't. The ones in Babylon and others in Rome were much larger. But it's good size. All right, here we go. But Orthodox Jews recognized Paul as having been seen in the presence of non-Jewish companions, and in order to see Paul killed, loudly accused Paul of bringing a Gentile into the court of Israel. Okay? That means he brought a Jew into this intersection in here, into the inner side here. That would be into the court of, this is the court of Gentiles that were allowed. This would be the court of Israel in there. They're not allowed. So he's going to be accused of bringing a Gentile into there. There's a sign above it that says, any Gentile here, we're allowed to kill you. They were given that permission by Rome, that they could, in the motion of the time, they could do away with them. All right, any question or thought?
False accusation.
Well, of course it is in this case. Through the Nicanor gate and into the temple area. In the middle of that section is this Nicanor gate. This goes from the court of women and the court of Israel, court of women here, into the court of Israel, into there, inside through that gate. And you can see the Holy of Holies will be inside this structure back here. That's the actual temple. And just so you can see that again, this would be the court of women, going through the mechanical gate, going into the temple itself, the inner sanctum there. Paul was threatened. He was then rescued by the Romans, but he asked to speak to the people to calm the riot. Paul believed that he could actually talk to people and get them to change their emotional or historical perspective. He was a talker. He believed he could actually reason with them. In this speech to the people, he remembers, now listen, another visit to Jerusalem and a vision of Jesus. But the only other time it is recorded that he visited Jerusalem was after his second journey in 52 AD, and Luke records no such incident as Paul is going to be talking about here. Okay? We don't know when this particular incident occurred, but it is a vision of Jesus. With me so far? Okay, so this is his telling the story, but no one else has corroborated it. Acts 22, 17 to 21.
I'll get it.
Thank you.
When I had returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance and saw him saying to me, him being Jesus,
Right.
"Make haste and get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not accept your testimony about me." And I said, "Lord, they themselves know that in one synagogue after another I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of Stephen, your witness, was being shed, I myself was standing by and approving and watching over the garments of those who killed him." And he said to me, "Go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles."
Okay, what do you see happening here? What is he telling us?
Don't stick around.
Yeah,
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 get out!
yeah. That it's not going to benefit anybody staying here.
Right. Is this a command by God?
Sounds like it.
Okay. Let's see. Make haste, get out of Jerusalem quickly. They will not accept your testimony.
And then he said, but I did all this stuff, you know.
See, they know how much I hated you. They're going to love it when I tell them that I'm now a follower. Yeah, I don't think so. And that's going to be the crux of the matter. Paul thinks he can convince them by telling them of what his life was like, and they would accept that and become followers. Worse.
I mean, he had a great testimony.
He did. And of course, everybody who heard it listened and believed it and became true followers, right? Yeah, not. Okay, so God is telling him to get out. But is it a command? In a trance, Paul sees and hears Jesus warning him to leave Jerusalem. They will not accept your testimony, he was told. But, Paul argued, that they would listen to his reasoning. Jesus then allowed the choice to Paul. But Jesus told Paul that he was being sent far away from Jerusalem to proclaim the good news to the Gentiles. Was it a command by God to Paul to leave?
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
It was a warning.
Advising him to.
Correct. It's good advice. And God has sometimes given us good advice and we not necessarily have followed it, right?
Sometimes takes us a while to get there.
Yeah, a couple of knocks upside the head will get our attention occasionally. But it was not a command, and Paul thought he knew better than what Jesus was telling him. We'll see how well that works out. Okay? And in our lives, the same thing is true. God gives us the scripture, the spirit, the law, the rules, the regulations, everything that's God given us, and we still ignore them sometimes. Because we know better.
Or we hope
Or we
something
hope for some,
different.
yes, we hope it will be better.
Or we're selfish.
Well, yes, there we go. Or we think we are better, and that God really isn't as smart as we are.
Or doesn't understand.
Doesn't understand me, yes, and my situation. Or our ego gets, I don't care what it is, okay? But in this case, Paul disagreed and said, no, I'm going to stay.
Or at least he, thought he'd give it a shot.
Right, give it a shot, But notice this. Even though he was going to give it a shot, and Jesus had told him specifically, I'm sending you away. Now, to me that says, you can stay and do all you want, but you're leaving. I'm going to make sure you get out of here. Because I have a mission for you. It's as though God is going to protect him, Jesus is going to protect him, even if he does something stupid. I mean, something personal. Does that way sound to you as well? Because he said, I am going to send you.
Yeah.
So that's the part that's important.
Well, you can resist,
right.
But I'm going to work things out such that my will is done.
And isn't that the way of it? That, what is it? We're going to do it God's way even though we don't intend to, or we didn't intend to, or something? I don't. Okay, here we go. Acts 22 and 23. Just 2 verses, please.
I got that.
Thank you.
Up to this point, they listened to him. But then they shouted, away with such a fellow from the earth, for he should not be allowed to live. And while they were shouting, throwing off their cloaks and tossing dust in the air. The tribute, through 24?
Yeah, no, just a little bit more.
Okay. The tribute directed that he was to be brought to the barracks.
Stop right there. That's good. I got to break it here at this point. So, what happened? He's telling the crowd, he's got them, right? And he's saying, hey, yeah. See, I was a terrible person. Now I've come a believer. And I'm going to the Gentiles. Did they like to hear that, do you think?
Of course not.
Of course not.
Jews wouldn't speak to Gentiles normally.
It was pretty bad, okay?
Yeah.
Certainly wouldn't go into their homes. Okay? So, when they heard that part about the Gentiles, they said what?
Away with him.
Kill him.
Yeah.
Get him off this earth. And they started rioting. Again. So the commander, or the tribune, had him brought into the barracks.
Okay.
So again, for his protection.
And this is the Romans.
These are the Romans,
Yes.
definitely.
Because you can't have a riot.
You're not allowed to have a riot.
Mm-hmm.
As the crowd was threatening Paul, the Roman troops moved into the crowd and rescued Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, rescued. Here we go. Paul volunteered to try to calm the crowds down by talking to them. Here, let me talk to them. I can do this. And he tells them all this about himself and all this wonderful story. But when Paul said that he'd been sent by God to the Gentiles, he was once again threatened by the crowd, once again rescued by the Romans. So here he is over here talking, and they're rescuing him. They're going to take him out of there. And they'll take him to the barracks. Acts 22, 24 through 29. 24 through 29.
Okay. The tribune ordered him to be brought into the barracks, saying that he should be examined by flogging to find out why they were shouting against him like this. But when they had stretched him out for the whips, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, "Is it lawful for you to flog a man who is a Roman citizen and uncondemned?" When the centurion heard this, he went to the tribune and said to him, "What are you about to do? For this man is a Roman citizen." So the tribune came and said to him, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" And he said, "Yes." The tribune answered, "I bought this citizenship for a large sum." Paul said, "But I am a citizen by birth." So those who were about to examine him withdrew from him immediately. And the tribune also was afraid, for he realized that Paul was a Roman citizen and that he had bound him.
Okay, what's happened? Tell me this story. Go ahead.
Well, so here where we live, we don't have a group of people that are above everyone else, except maybe politicians and movie stars. But the point is, we don't have a caste system.
Correct.
Clearly, at this time, the Romans were the top of the caste system.
Right. Agreed. Very good. And what they said went, and they could be as capricious as they wanted, and it didn't matter.
And it was the standard procedure to, well, if we want to find out what's going on, let's beat the bejeebers out of him.
Why would they do that?
I don't know.
We don't do that. Well, back in Chicago we did.
You start, doing me with whips. I mean, whatever you say, I'll just stop.
The general thinking is that you start by showing them how much it's going to hurt and what you can do to them. Then you ask them the questions you want and you expect them to tell you the truth. And you've got little thoughts about what you think the truth is. And if they don't hit that, you hit them again and more and beat them up more till you get them to admit to what you believe is the truth. Okay? So you start by saying, this is, we're going to show you that it's going to hurt. And then after that, we'll actually talk to you. I think we did away with that basic system here, except for in Chicago, of course, New York. Back in the 20s, whatever it was, where they would beat them up occasionally to get them to talk. So this is outside our way of thinking.
And one of the perks of being a Roman citizen is that you are not automatically put under those negative circumstances. You have other recourse.
There seems to have been some sort of exception for the Roman citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Some rules about that. So there would be an advantage to being a Roman citizen, wouldn't there?
Yes.
Well, and because they were the organization that's in power, the elite,
Right.
Someone could make false accusations and get them beat up, and in this way they would not be able to do that.
Yes, good point there. Okay.
Interesting how he was born a citizen, which is even better than paying, this other guy paid a large sum of money.
Yes.
Required.
And it's more important that if you're born a citizen, that's even more. Up in Tarsus, where he was born of Roman parentage. One parent was Roman. So he gets to say, hey, I'm a citizen from the beginning. I am naturalized here. I'm it, not naturalized. I am a natural citizen. Whereas the other guy goes, I'm just adopted. And Paul gets the priority. Now, what happens if this commander or this person authorized him to go ahead and get beaten up without being condemned?
So then he is going to be prosecuted for his crimes.
Correct. It will be a crime against the person who did it or authorized it. So you don't really want to mess with a Roman citizen. And this came as a surprise because they didn't expect him to be a Roman citizen. They just figured he was some Jew.
The thing that I find interesting with this is today you would display a paper to show your citizenship.
Good point.
What did they do there? I have no clue. Go talk to people maybe.
I have no idea. I'm sure they've got some kind of records of it somewhere. I don't know. I don't think there was a tattoo. All right, let's find out. The tribune ordered Paul examined by flogging. But when he found out Paul was a Roman citizen, he immediately had Paul untied, released. Okay? Acts 22:30.
I can take it.
Thank you.
But on the next day, desiring to know the real reason why he was being accused by the Jews, he unbound him and commanded the chief priests and all the council to meet, and he brought Paul down and set him before them.
So what happened?
Here's a chance for Paul to talk.
He wants to find out what everybody else is saying, why they were out to get him. He wants to know what's happening. Why were they after this Jewish citizen, Roman citizen? Okay, and notice it includes chief priests in the council. They're the ones who are who stand behind whatever happens. They're the ones who are responsible for whatever happens in the temple area.
Well, ultimately, they were the accusers.
Well, yeah, they probably even may even have instigated this, because someone spread a false rumor. Then the tribune arranged to have the chief priest and his council meet with Paul the next day. Acts 23, 1 through 5.
You read it?
Sure.
And Paul looked intently at the council, said, Brethren, I have lived before God in all good conscience up to this day. And the high priest, Ananias commanded those who stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God shall strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you sitting to judge me according to the law, and yet contrary to the law you order me to be struck? Those who stood by said, Would you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I did not know, brethren, that he was the high priest, for it is written, You shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people.
All right, let's stop there and let's kind of take a look at what's happening here. What's happening?
Okay, so comes up before the high priest and all these folks, but apparently he doesn't realize that Ananias is the high priest.
Okay, Ananias is not the high priest. Well, yeah, he is. This one is. He's the child of an earlier Ananias.
Okay.
It's not that same Ananias.
Oh, because, years have gone by.
Many years, 28.
Actually, I didn't realize that.
There we go. This is another Ananias.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
So anyway, he starts to tell this stuff and
for some reason.
And he really, Paul is probably just a little bit annoyed.
and annoying and confrontational.
Is basically accusing him of being a complete hypocrite about this whole thing. And so Ananias is offended and whacks him.
Well, did he get hit, or did he just say to hit him on the mouth?
He probably didn't. I don't know. It's an interesting question.
The scriptures don't say he was hit.
Yeah.
Commanded those who stood.
That's true.
Yeah.
But regardless,
either way,
certainly was his desire that he be.
If he'd been hit in the mouth, he probably couldn't have said this so quickly.
Yeah.
This may have been, oh, you're about to hit me? Kind of thought. That would be my thinking, but I don't know.
But for him to say, it is a violation of the law for you to strike me, and he's right there in front of the Romans.
No, it's not a violation of Roman law.
No. But
it's
the Romans are
religious.
Yeah, but the Romans brought him down there, right?
And they're observing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have witnesses if he is struck, if it's a violation of the law.
Yeah, but the Romans won't care. It's a violation of the religious aspect of the laws. This is Torah stuff. So no, they won't care. They'll be observing it to see what happened. But here he is. He's about to be struck. And what he does is attacks first with his mouth. He looks at this guy and he says, you whitewashed wall. That's not a nice thing to say to somebody in those days. It's really not. What happens then?
Well, then somebody
Right.
says, oh my goodness, you're saying bad things to the high priest.
Right. You just called the high priest a whitewashed wall. Oh, and Paul's response is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I found that too.
Yeah. I kind of have some thoughts about it, but he says, gee, I wasn't aware he was the high priest. Well, he hasn't been there for years. And Ananias may have been high priest and Paul wasn't associated with him. It's been a long time. See, he might not have dressed in the full garb of a high priest. This is not a trial, it's a gathering. So he might not have recognized him. I can understand that. Okay? Any questions so far? This is the part that's interesting to me. You shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. If you just look around the world today, you say something against the leader of Russia, you may end up with being blown up in a plane, you know, or there are other places where if you speak evil of the ruler, you're arrested and in prison for a while if you're lucky to survive it. Here, gee, politicians don't want you to speak evil of them. They certainly won't. So there are consequences. Maybe they won't help your group out that didn't vote for them if it has a problem. There are consequences. Okay? You're not supposed to speak evil of your rulers? Does that hold true today?
Well, depends on what country you're in.
Does it?
Sure it does.
Name one country where if you speak evil of the person in charge, you don't get in trouble.
Oh, well, I mean, people say things all the time.
I was going to say, have you spoken something against the president? I certainly have.
Well,
many of them.
Sure, but not publicly enough in the sense that it's recorded throughout the country. It's got to. You still have to get it PR'd, even if you're out negative. Gee, go up to a country just north of ours, speak out against their person, and he just really gets ticked off at you, and takes away your money and stuff like that, and your right to protest. I don't know any country where people like to be told they're bad news and they're the rulers. They're going to respond. It's human nature. Okay? So I have questions about this. It's a rule from God telling me I'm not supposed to speak bad about rulers. I have real problems with that in this country, or any country.
Well, so I think the assumption at the time was
Yes.
the ruler is put in place by God.
Yes.
And so therefore you don't...
Or they are gods, depending on what other country.
Well,
either way.
sure.
And therefore, you just better shut up and do what you're told.
Yeah.
Well, and then later, or at some point, I mean, I don't know what letter it is, one of the Pauline letters, but he does talk about that you're supposed to honor the rulers and obey. They're put in place, as you say, put in place by God to keep order.
Yep. And even Jesus told us, give unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. But unto God the things that are God's, and that takes priority. And that's what a ruler, political ruler, does not want to hear. So there's limits to what this says. Okay? All right, let's find out. An inquiry was set up by the Roman tribune and included Ananias, who had become high priest in 48 AD, and the Sanhedrin. Acts 23, 6 through 10.
I got that.
Okay.
When Paul noticed that some were Sadducees and others were Pharisees, he called out to the council, "Brothers, I am a Pharisee, son of Pharisees, and I'm on trial concerning the hope of the resurrection of the dead." When he said this, a dissension began between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. The Sadducees say that there is no resurrection or angel or spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge all three. When a great clamor arose, a certain scribe of the Pharisees' group stood up and contended, "We find nothing wrong with this man. What if a spirit of an angel has spoken to him?" When the dissension became violent, the tribune, fearing that they would tear Paul to pieces, ordered the soldiers to go down and take him by force and bring him into the barracks.
Okay. Paul did this.
He was smart.
He did. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, he believed this, certainly, but he just threw a monkey wrench into the whole works.
Or a bunch of snakes. And yeah, he really got them going. He saw this quickly. He used this to his advantage. Paul is not averse to dealing with it this way. That's kind of interesting. Part of his character. Okay? So he got them to divide, and then they got rioting with each other, and the commander decided to get him out of there. Paul created a passionate argument between the Pharisee members and the Sadducee members of the Sanhedrin, and was once again rescued by the Romans. This time he was taken to the fortress of Antonia, attached to the north side of the temple complex for his own protection. Okay? Any question? Thought? Or comment?
I mean, these days we'd be rolling our eyes like, okay, there's my... I haven't gotten my eyeballs
Back in.
popped up there from being...
Wow.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul was not an easy person to get along with. He was sharp.
But Paul lived his life as an adventurer.
Yes.
I mean, shipwrecks, you name it, right?
Yeah. His life was an adventure.
Yes. It actually, to me, if nothing else, from a literary standpoint, it's a great book.
It's that you reading the Paul and what he did and where he went and all. He was really very good with his voice. He wasn't much to look at apparently, but at least he was dramatic. He was good as a person speaking.
He could motivate people, clearly.
Yeah, one way or another. And here he motivated them again. All right, here we go. Acts 23:11.
The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, "Take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome."
Okay, what happened?
Well, if he's being sent to Rome, Paul knows how to make this happen. Will know how to make this happen. But that is a long ways away.
Yes.
And Rome is decidedly non-Christian at this point in time.
Non-Jewish too.
Non-Jewish. I mean, they worship everything, right? Anything and everything.
Yeah, not really, but close enough.
But we do know that Rome being the center of government,
Yes.
if you could convince them that Jesus was the Messiah, you have you've got some significant effects.
Agreed. I'm not sure that was his thinking, because what is happening here that Jesus is telling him that he didn't tell him before? See, we don't pick that up.
Well,
he's telling him, I'm not just sending you away to talk to them. He says, I'm sending you to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Very specific in this case.
Not just Gentiles.
Not just the Gentiles in general, which he has been kind of doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, it's, I'm going to send you to Rome. And I'm sure Paul goes, oh, good. I've always wanted to go there.
Well, and then, putting this in the context of the Lord's appearances after the resurrection,
Yes.
it says stood at his side. So, I mean, this was another appearance
Correct.
to Paul.
Which is why we're recording it here.
Yeah.
We're looking at the appearances. You have been a great witness, but I'm going to send you now. And you said you're going to go to the Gentiles. I told you I was going to send you to Israel. I'm going to send you all the way to Rome. Okay? And by the way, that's not as far away as he goes. He goes much further than Rome. But that would be under the study of Paul and all of that. So just be aware, for him, this is going from one extreme, Jerusalem, to another extreme, Rome, where it's the head of this huge religious, political monolith. Okay? And he's going to go into that, like the lion's den.
Yeah.
And that's a real change in his thinking. That night, while sitting in his cell, Paul saw the Lord. The Lord instructed Paul to continue to be strong in his faith. Then the Lord again gave Paul a look into his future. as he had in 37 AD. Just as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must bear witness also in Rome. This time, Paul did not argue.
Well, God acknowledged that he tried.
That's right, absolutely. I love it. Okay, I'll shut up, I've learned.
Well, but we also have throughout, we've got within Scripture a history of that. Jesus sending people out, and if they don't accept you, you shake the dust off your feet, right?
That's right. You know, you don't have, we are called, we are not required, we're not forced to follow the Lord. We're called to follow the Lord. It's a voluntary thing.
Mm-hmm. But we are also not called to convert people, we are called to tell them.
Good. It's not our responsibility to convert them. For that we need chains and whips, okay, sometimes. Our job is to sow the seed. It's to do what we are able to do under the Lord's direction. Not all of us are good at talking to others about the Lord, but we may be very good at arranging the financing for a missionary. We may not be good at one thing, but we may be good at something else. So it's all like the body. Each part is useful and different. Not one is greater than the other, although we like to think of it. Okay? And certainly some parts of our gathering think they're more important than others. The Pope ended up into this issue a little later, okay? Where they thought they're better than everybody else. Anything? Any question, thought, or comment?
Was Paul real pleased about this, or was he kind of shaking in his boots? I mean, it was kind of...
That's a very interesting way of putting it. Did he like the thought, or was he going, oh no? Well, he's only finished his third journey, so he's going to be going on a fourth one. And then I believe a fifth one, but the fourth one will take him to Rome. Okay? Go ahead.
You know, I think he was so in tune with the Lord by this time, if not earlier, that it was exciting to him to be facing something new. He just really wanted to do whatever the Lord asked him to do. And he was bold.
Yeah, it was very strong, you know, and very, yes, and he did like to go where others had not gone before, pardoning that comment that way. It may bring other thoughts to your mind, ignore them. But I see in a number of instances, in all his journeys, he gets a chance, he goes, oh, I got a minute or two, I'm going to go over there and try that. I'll go talk to them. He's very bold like that, and I think you're right. I think he would see this as a challenge, and I think he would look forward to going to Rome. By the way, when he writes the letters to the Romans, which is in anticipation of his going there, he says, I'm really looking forward to coming over there. So you're right. You're absolutely correct. But I'm sorry, he's human, and I think there's going to be a certain, I don't know if I'll call it fear, but certainly apprehension about what could happen. Okay, here we go. I'll read these because it's partial. Acts 23:12 and 16 through 17 reads, in the morning the Jews joined in a conspiracy and bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink until they had killed Paul. Now, the son of Paul's sister, his nephew, heard about the ambush. So he went and gained entrance to the barracks and told Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to report to him. Mm-hmm. Okay? What's happened here?
Well, there's going to be a bunch of Jews that get real hungry.
They're supposed to die from this hunger if they're unsuccessful.
Yeah. But, I mean...
Good grief.
That's a commitment, right?
But if someone reports something like that to you and you think it needs to be passed up the chain, don't give them hearsay. Send the person who reported it.
That's right. So, I thought they'd probably end up dying of hunger if they followed through with their oath, because an oath is supposed to be unbroken. And it would have been an oath to God. Okay? That would have been my thinking. So they must have died when they could not get to him, if they could not get to him.
Well,
we know he lived a little longer.
I was going to say, you can also bet that these people probably didn't follow through on their oath.
Well, that's very interesting, and I would agree with you. I would agree 100%. Or they would have, maybe they died attacking him. We don't know yet until they tell us. But either way, this is an oath of death. He must die or we must die. It's simple as that. Acts 23, 22 through 24.
It's my turn, I can get it.
Sure.
Then he summoned 2 of the centurions and said, "Get ready to leave by 9 o'clock tonight for Caesarea, with 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride, and take him safely to Felix the governor."
Okay. What did this commander person do?
Shipped him out where they can't get him.
And didn't just send him off with a couple of guys.
No, that's a significant contingent of people.
Yeah. They apparently thought that this was a serious threat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it says earlier, you didn't have us read it, so his nephew's telling him about this, and there's more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for him.
There it is. Okay? Had to skip some stuff.
Yeah.
So they hear about this and they're going, okay, if we're going to be attacked by 40 to get this guy, and they're committed to doing it, we're going to protect him because we're the Romans. We're not going to let him do it.
And he's Roman.
And he's a Roman.
Cannot allow that.
That's right. No matter what. So here we go.
A citizen anyway.
Paul was put on a horse that night, and by 9 p.m. was leaving Jerusalem with a Roman escort of 200 foot soldiers, 200 spearmen, and 70 men on horseback.
I also can't help but to think about, in these days, leaving at 9 o'clock at night. It's pitch dark. They don't have electric lights.
No, they
don't have flashlights.
No.
They don't have anything, maybe torches.
They do have torches if they want to use them.
But maybe they had a moon out. Who
Maybe,
knows?
maybe not.
But that is still a dramatic,
They're determined,
yeah,
very determined to make sure they get
and
this guy.
difficult in those days.
Yes. I mean, by doing it at night like this, they have the advantage of defending, because the attackers wouldn't be able to see who they're going after easily. And so you're going to run into all these spears and swords and whatnot. So, yeah, they were serious about defending him. They were taking him to the Mediterranean sea coast, city of Caesarea. When they reached Antipatris, a ride of 40 miles, they stopped for the remainder of the night. This is the ruins of Antipatris. Antipatris was built on the old town of Aphek, where the Ark of the Covenant had been captured by the Philistines. You may remember that story. When Paul arrived in Antipatris, it was being used as a Roman military relay station. The next morning, found him on the road again to Caesarea. So he'd come from Jerusalem down to Antipatris, and the next day he's going to Caesarea.
Another thing that got my attention was saying, and provide a horse for Paul. So you're not going to make him suffer, you're going to help him.
He is a Roman citizen by birth. Oh yeah, he is now one of the elite.
Yeah.
You know, okay, whatever you say. It's interesting. That's a very different, you know, there used to be being citizen of certain countries gave you a certain elite status in the world. Mm-hmm. That doesn't always hold true anymore. Okay, Acts 23, 33 through 35.
I got it.
Okay.
When they had come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from. And when he learned that he was from Cilicia, he said, I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive. And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium.
Okay, anything come to your mind? Anything strike you here?
Well, the assumption that the accusers were on their way.
Oh, they would be soon enough.
Yeah, and we know that he had accusers that would arrive.
Oh, yes, you will.
But clearly, we don't know what's in the letter, and it makes me wonder what exactly it said.
Good thinking. It kind of, sort of, at least gave the summary of what happened and why they hurried him down there. Okay? All right. Cilicia, by the way, is up to the northeast corner of the Mediterranean. It's up right around Turkey. Northern Syria, northwestern Syria, and Turkey.
Would Tarsus be in that? Because he was from Tarsus.
Yes.
Okay.
Paul was delivered to Governor Felix in Caesarea, 35 miles distant, which was known for its harbor. It was built in a harbor. The Eastern Mediterranean does not have a lot of harbors naturally. They actually built a harbor for it. Okay? And it was well known for that. Its stadium, which has even been put together again today, it was a Roman town. It was important Roman town. It was a seat of power for the Romans. Okay? And they build all these Roman structures because that's normal for Romans. He was put in a holding cell, and arrangements made for his accusers to be in Caesarea within 5 days for hearing. Now, it's not part of this story because this is about the revelation, about the appearance of Jesus to him. And we know he's going to Rome. Right now he's down in Caesarea, but he's going to go to Rome. Okay? By the way, the accusers from Jerusalem said, oh, no. Bring him back up here and we'll talk about it. That way the 40 guys would be able to get it, you see. And Felix says, no. Okay, and that's just part of the story of Paul. We're not really doing that right now. We're just looking at the appearances. So the next time we get together, for the last time, the Son of Man returns and will be seen by all.